participants. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to talk about a very important tool in the control of designs, and that is the design inputs, design outputs traceability matrix. However, we're going to do this in the context of lean documents and its close cousin, lean configuration. We're going to start with some thought-provoking images from everyday life that we should all be able to relate to. And then we're going to talk about the genesis of chaos, which is an apt description for the current state of documentation in most companies I've been in. So how did we get here? How did we get to this chaos that we're in? Because I've now been in small companies, medium-sized, large companies. It doesn't matter. It's the same problem everywhere. Why is it that documents seem to be empty? We seem to get more disorganized and more problematic. If we step back and think of every example so far, documents become multifunction. We kept asking them to do more things for us. Now, if we think about the types of documents that we encounter in medical devices, and you can also have in pharmaceutical the same thing, but you have drawings, specifications, procedures. The point is that, even job descriptions, the point is there aren't that many types of documents. So why are there so many documents? If we're talking lean, anybody who's worked in lean knows that lean is about the elimination of waste. So let's talk about the different types of waste associated with document systems, and more specifically, the process of making documents, as well as the documents themselves, because they reflect what happens. This idea of multifunction documents is a false sense of efficiency. The writer may be an expert in only one function. A revision of one function triggers a revision of the document, and then it's organized in various ways depending on the author, and now you have different mixes of elements, so they require different documents for essentially the same purpose. Also, a person or department may only need one or two functions from a multifunction document. For example, if you put the maintenance instructions on an assembly instruction, the maintenance department only needs to look at that part. They don't need to make product. And this could lead to confusion because they may be doing stuff that they're not trained to do. You certainly don't want an untrained operator overhauling a machine, and you probably don't want a maintenance mechanic trying to make catheters. You need people that are properly trained. So when you mix up this information, you run that risk. It creates confusion. In lean manufacturing, when we're trying to go towards lean, we identify process delays, because delays are a form of waste. They're the waste of time, right? So let's go back to that drill press so we can get a visual image here. And finally, when you think of all the different types of documents, and when you have them referring to each other, you end up with what I call the tangled web of cross-references. So, okay, so what's this theory? Well, the theory of lean documents is that the complexity and number of documents in a controlled document system is primarily caused and driven by the number of functions per document. Another major source of waste are those numbering schemes that you see everywhere, and if you go from one company to another, you'll learn why their scheme is absolutely necessary, because they've always done it that way. So lean documents is not some crazy theory. It's really getting back to basics. It's taking the types of documents we are familiar with and taking them back to their original intended function. Now, lean documents has a close cousin, and I call that lean configuration. There are actually 9 elements that allow you to run your entire QMS, and for that matter, your entire business. There is an alternative to that tangled web of cross-references, and it's a good segue into the design traceability matrix. So on the right-hand side, you have your design history file, and you have your phases of design control. So you have your design and development planning, design input, all the way to design transfer when you transfer to manufacturing to produce your product. Specifically, where it mentions the traceability matrix, now they're not telling you you have to have one, but think of it as an 800-pound hint. They're looking for that. They want to see it, but don't do it for them. Do it for you so that you can make sense of your requirements and your design. So it's a self-documented verification method, and it's particularly useful when the design input and output are both documents. Conceptually, the design control process is very straightforward. The traceability matrix presents a transition from the voice of the customer all the way to a finished and validated design. It identifies each element of design input in terms of user requirements and translates them into measurable technical requirements. So the user requirements are stated in the voice of the customer. It's the language of the user, not the language of the design engineer, and it should be a specific user need. So in a lean configuration, the viewer can hyperlink and navigate from the URS all the way to the PDR and actually all the way to design transfer. Any of these elements can be printed if you so choose, and you can configure a whole trace matrix on a database. Now, that may or may not be practical or necessary. So you can choose a spreadsheet or you can have it on a database. So you want to make sure that a user requirement spec can be fully translated into a measurable spec. You don't want to use platitudes that later cannot be confirmed or measured. You want to be able to use the trace matrix forwards and backwards to navigate the consistency of your design. So in conclusion, the trace matrix can and should be a living document. It shouldn't be something you do at the very end and then file it away.